I want to go to Ryan Mauro. I talked to him earlier today because one of the things that we have to do is we have to stop the funding of all of these things that are on the left that we have honestly now started to find out. I mean, I've been exposing this stuff on chalkboards for years and years, almost 2 decades now, and how the George Soroses, et cetera, of the world are funding all of the worst of the worst. And Ryan has done his work and has really come up with some smoking guns, especially on George Soros. Donald Trump can use as RICO charges. And Ryan is here to lay this all out. What did you find, Ryan?
Well, we had some amazing findings according to George Soros's own files from his Open Society foundations. So myself, my colleagues at Capital Research Center, basically went through as many grants of his, as many funding streams as we could find. And here's the smoking guns that we believe that President Trump, if he's informed of it, can use to go after Soros's network of hate in various ways. We traced over $80 million going from the Open Society foundations to at least 54 groups engaged in crime and domestic terrorism on U.S. soil, or that are pro-terrorism, endorsing things like the October 7th attacks, or are associated with foreign terrorist organizations or explicitly pro-terror groups. And this is according to his own file, so it's rock solid. And over all of that amount, over 23 million went to at least 7 groups that are doing things that meet the FBI's definition of domestic terrorism, including rioting and things like that.
Can you be specific, more specific than this?
Absolutely. I'm happy to. So the Center for Third World Organizing, for example, is an organization that has a hub that fused together several really extreme organizations. We found $400,000 going to them, and they openly boast of the fact that they threw down during the uprisings in Minnesota, obviously referring to the rioting, and boasting of how many thousands of people they helped train. A lot of these groups have created what they'll call like a protest guide or an activism toolkit, and it sounds innocuous. Then you open it up and you'll see support for Hamas in it, but then they'll sometimes slyly say, for more information, go to these hyperlinks. And you go to the hyperlinks, and there'll be guides recommending things like property destruction, violence, false IDs, how to obstruct justice, all of these things, and they know darn well what they're doing. They don't put that there by accident. Some of the more careful ones will just direct their readership to anarchist websites with all that material, knowing that they'll see it when it's there. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really stunning. And some of these groups are coalitions. So when I say 54 groups, just one of those might have 300 entities in that one. So it's actually, the real number is actually much higher.
Let me play something from October 2010, where I was talking about the RICO Act and George Soros. Listen to this.
But this is the ABCs of revolution. This is only a copy of it. I only have a copy of it. I don't have the original yet. They talk about urban guerrilla tactics. The instant any area is occupied by revolutionaries, it must be appropriated forthwith according to 2 incontestable principles: self-defense and free distribution of the goods produced. The best way to avoid isolation is to attack. Thus, one must, with an eye to the internationalist direction, remember, workers of the world unite, create other nuclei for occupations and appropriations, strengthen and protect liaison between revolutionary zones, isolate the enemy and destroy communications, use commando tactics to harass and rear guard and avoid encirclement by splitting up his forces, disorganize the counter-revolution by rendering its principal leaders and the best strategists harmless. Do you have that one? Disorganize the counter-revolution by rendering its principal leaders and the best strategists harmless. How do they do that? Is the left threatening? Is that something that people who are in that position should worry about their lives? Or is that just render them harmless by, well, let's just see if I can come up with a crazy example. Here, some rich dude takes $1 million. and does everything they can to smear and discredit. By the way, George, have you ever heard of the RICO statute? Anyway.
RICO. This is 2010, 15 years ago. I was saying George Soros should be grabbed by the RICO Act. Donald Trump looks like he's now willing to go there. And again, we're talking to Ryan Mauro, who says he has the goods on this. How long have you been working on this, Ryan?
Probably about a year.
And what got you started on this?
Well, I think it started when I released a report breaking down the anti-Israel protests that were going on. I saw that was like manufactured. It was like pushing a button. And we identified over 150 pro-terrorism groups organizing those protests. There weren't peaceful groups behind it. And so when that report came out, which is very similar to this one, this is almost somewhat of a sequel, one of the radical entities that's Hamas friendly had this to say about the research that we released. So the same would be true of the Soros report that we're about to release at 1 o'clock. It said that these reports we're doing pose an existential threat that could easily mean a quick death for most of the groups by getting their tax-exempt statuses ripped away from them. And so those that survive would suffer mass chaos. So they're saying that we have figured out how to beat them if we just get this into the right hands. And so at 1 o'clock, this is what we're dropping about George Soros as part of our investigation. And that's what I said on your show earlier. The counteroffensive begins today. It begins at 1 o'clock.
You know, it was probably 2010 that George Soros's number two guy met with my number two guy. And they had lunch in a public place because that's what we requested when they said we want to have lunch. And I was not part of it, but it was just the second in command, if you will, meeting with each other and sending messages. And this lunch started with, you need to tell your boss, me, is hurting my boss, Soros, and it's going to stop. And my guy said, I don't think it is. I mean, if he's getting something wrong, he'd be more than happy to correct it. And he said at the time, your boss needs to understand the ship has already sailed. It's just pulling out of port right now. And you're either on that ship or you're not. And you want to be on that ship. And he said, my boss is going to say he doesn't want to be on that ship. And at the very end of the conversation, he said, I want you to hear me clearly. This is going to stop. We took that as a very large threat. And that is one of the reasons why I did the Puppet Master show on Fox. I did a 3-day special showing everything about George Soros that we could find at the time. You realize who you're getting into war with, don't you?
I do, and I don't care. I know I'm supposed to do this. And so that ship that he was talking about, we're going to sink it. And all the other big billionaire-funded organizations are out there that are funding this type of filth, that are poisoning American civil society and spreading this type of hate that resulted in what happened a week ago. You're on notice. If you're doing this by mistake, I will volunteer my time to help you vet the organizations that you finance so you don't fund terrorism and hate if you're genuine.
Well,
if you're not genuine and you continue doing it, you're next.
Looking at your research, there's a handful of grants that are nuts for things like children that include ideas of hierarchy, supremacy, colonialism, and to the Alinsky Institute in France, which is in honor of Saul Alinsky, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's exactly right. When you go through the report, you'll see that the organizations that they're funding are so blatantly connected to foreign terrorist organizations, so blatantly extremist. This goes on year after year. So before, when there would be reports about this in drips and drabs, I could kind of understand some people saying, well, out of thousands of grants, maybe some mistakes are made. This is no mistake. We have disproven this. And I keep thinking about how when the Iranian regime allows pro-terrorism entities to fundraise on Iranian soil, what do we call that? We call that state sponsorship of terrorism. In the United States, when American nonprofits in the nonprofit sector allow pro-terror entities to fundraise on American soil, what do we call it? We call it charity. And so that has to come to an end. The IRS code, as we talk about in the report, is being violated. You're not allowed to engage in crime. You're not even allowed to encourage crime. That can't be part of your nonprofit mission. And so these statuses need to be revoked. And just like that one extremist group said, if we go down that path, we don't even have to get into the hate speech argument.
Yeah.
We can beat them. We can beat them rapidly.
Ryan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your conversation with us. Back on the Charlie Kirk Show in a minute.